he won't speak to me. But it would be nice to reconcile.
4 months after telling the BBC that,
they'll meet again when the King and Queen visit America next year. But Andrew, it's not likely.
Well, I think there's
people in the room that Meghan Markle needed to be formally announced, formally welcomed. I mean, that's extraordinary.
November 30th, 2025, 9 a.m., Buckingham Palace press room. 19 words get read out loud, and the entire world just stops. The announcement, Meghan Markle's title as Duchess of Sussex is done, gone, just like that. No warning, no buildup, just done. Meghan Markle was officially out. But here's the thing. This didn't happen overnight. What you're about to hear took years of behind-the-scenes drama, private warnings, and a king who finally had enough. This is how it really went down. Like, before we get into this, hit that like button and subscribe, because what I'm about to show you, the closed door meetings, the personal letters that got ignored, the business deals that crossed the line, you're not going to believe it. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next.
Walls like thunder in a teacup. The British Parliament, yes, the actual lawmakers, are reportedly preparing to do...
Now let's dive in. So listen, what most people don't know is this whole thing didn't just happen out of nowhere. For 18 months straight, people inside Buckingham Palace were keeping track of everything. And I mean everything. It all started back in July 2025 when they began what they called an internal review. Sounds boring, right? Like some routine paperwork situation. But what they were actually doing was building a record, keeping track of every single move, every interview, every business deal that raised eyebrows. People at the top started putting together a review of everyone who held a title, and guess whose name kept popping up? Meghan Markle, over and over again. But listen to this. It wasn't for her charity work or royal engagements. It was for what insiders were calling ongoing issues with how she represented the family. Translation, she was doing stuff that made the palace extremely uncomfortable, and it wasn't stopping. See, it wasn't just one thing that pushed them over the edge. It was the pileup.
To celebrate what's happening is the 250th anniversary. Donald Trump made it very clear that he would be delighted.
Think about it. The Netflix documentary that dropped back in December 2022, that alone was massive. Then you've got the Spotify deal that totally crashed and burned, leaving everyone asking what even happened there. The ghost-written memoir chapters that kept coming out, one after another, each one revealing more private family moments. All of it just stacking up like a tower about to collapse. But what really got under their skin, and this is the part that changed everything, Meghan was using the royal name to make money. Not just casually mentioning it here and there, but aggressively building an entire commercial network around it. Every venture, every deal, every partnership somehow tied back to that Duchess of Sussex title. Watching someone take something sacred and turn it into a brand logo, that's what this felt like to them. Staff members started noticing a pattern that couldn't be ignored anymore. Royal connection mentioned in a pitch meeting here, Sussex branding slapped on a product there, and suddenly the whole thing shifted.
Slicing right through the moment like a perfectly timed interruption.
I'm ignoring this. It will be your time.
Representing the crown, that wasn't the priority anymore. Continuing the legacy or honoring tradition, not even close. Building a personal empire with a title she got from marrying into the family. Now that's what they were seeing. The people watching from inside the palace, they saw it clear as day. Each new project, each new announcement, it all kept circling back to the same thing. The title wasn't being honored or protected, being leveraged. Absolutely. Being sold, you could say that. And the more they watched, the more uncomfortable it became. What made it worse was the timing of everything. Right after stepping back from royal duties, right after saying they wanted privacy and independence, the deals started rolling in. Netflix, Spotify, book contracts, foundation launches, all of it happening at lightning speed. And every single announcement somehow involved that Duchess title or a reference to royal life or inside palace stories.
Full hospitality that President Trump can offer. There was talk about William and Kate joining him, but that's probably unlikely.
Like they'd walked away but kept the royal name for themselves? That's exactly how it looked. For months, the palace just observed. They didn't make noise, didn't leak stories, just quietly watched and kept notes. But by summer 2025, the file on Meghan had gotten thick, really thick. Not because anyone was out to get her, but because the activity was relentless and it all pointed in the same direction. Commercialization of a royal position. And that's when the conversations inside those palace walls started changing. It went from, let's see how this plays out, to, we need to do something about this. Because at the end of the day, titles in the royal family aren't just fancy names you get to keep forever. They come with expectations, standards, responsibilities. And if those aren't being met, well, the crown has options, and they were about to use them. Now, while all this was building up in the background, you've got to understand what the king was going through personally.
It's over. Harry and Meghan, they're out. And that dreamlike thing they called Project Thaw, it's been buried 6 feet under.
Behind closed doors, Charles was absolutely torn apart. This wasn't some cold, calculated business decision for him. This was his son, his family, and he was watching it all fall apart in real time. September 2025, he made his move. Picked up the phone and called Harry directly. Not through assistants, not through spokespeople, just father to son. Those calls went absolutely nowhere. So he tried something more personal. Handwritten letters, the kind he's always written, pouring out everything he wanted to say. His son ignored them, every single one. Then the king went even further. He suggested they meet face to face at Sandringham, somewhere private where they could actually talk without cameras or pressure. Just the two of them, trying to figure this out like a normal family would. But every attempt shut down completely, or worse, sent back through handlers. Not even Harry responding directly anymore. Just people managing the situation, keeping that wall up between father and son. Can you imagine how that must have felt? You're trying to reach your own kid and you can't even get through.
Meghan's brand, which is she likes to style herself as the anti-royal rebel. She didn't want to do any royal duties, but
By early October 2025, Charles realized something had shifted permanently. This wasn't a phase his son was going through. This wasn't something that time would heal. The distance had become intentional, calculated, and there was no bridge left to cross. The people around him started noticing the change, too. He wasn't angry exactly, more like heartbroken and resigned at the same time. October 14th, 2025. That's the day everything changed. He sat down and finally signed off on it. The paperwork that would make it official. Meghan's title was going away. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. This had been sitting in front of him for weeks, maybe months. But signing it meant accepting that reconciliation wasn't coming. It meant choosing the institution over his relationship with Harry.
The only way to stop that future was to stop the titles, for good. While all of this was building, something else was happening.
And that's a weight nobody should have to carry. Princess Anne was there when it happened. She'd been pushing for this longer than anyone, seeing the damage way before it became obvious to everyone else. She backed him up, and so did others in the inner circle. But it was Charles's signature that mattered. His decision, his responsibility. What he told his closest aide that day, it'll stick with you. This is no longer about family, it's about keeping the crown alive. Think about that for a second. A father having to say those words about his own son's situation. It wasn't said with anger or spite. People who were there said he looked exhausted when he said it, like someone who'd been fighting a losing battle for years and finally had to admit defeat. The whole thing was intensely personal in a way most people don't realize. He'd been king for just a few years at this point.
Could ever take away their status. But then came the one thing they never expected. The king's official decision, written,
still finding his footing, still trying to modernize the monarchy while keeping its core intact. And now his own son and daughter-in-law were making that job 10 times harder. Every interview they gave, every show they produced, every business deal they announced, it all reflected back on him and the institution he was trying to protect. But what broke him wasn't the public stuff. It wasn't the Netflix shows or the tell-all books. What broke him was the silence. The phone calls that never got returned, the letters that went unanswered, the invitations that got rejected. Harry had essentially vanished from his life, replaced by lawyers and representatives and carefully worded statements. The son he knew was gone, and in his place was someone the king couldn't reach anymore. So when he finally put pen to paper on October 14th, he wasn't just signing paperwork about a title.
Markle of every last royal title.
The gruesome twosome, Harry and Meghan, they're increasing ostracization by the...
He was closing a door he'd spent months trying to keep open, and everyone around him knew it. December 2022. That's when the family truly shattered. The Netflix special dropped, and let me tell you, it wasn't just another documentary. Meghan went on camera and did something that absolutely shocked the royals to their core. She mocked the royal curtsy. Not subtly, not in passing, but full-on theatrical mockery. She literally performed this exaggerated curtsy, then started giggling about how absurd the whole tradition was. To her, it was probably just being real, showing how outdated these customs felt. To the royal family, it was watching someone spit on centuries of tradition for entertainment value. Queen Elizabeth saw that clip. The woman who'd spent her entire life upholding those very traditions.
Legal commentators, Meghan's reported determination to protect a British title could bump into something she probably didn't expect. Actual U.S. law. That's when social...
Who dedicated every single day to the dignity of the crown. She watched it happen on screen. People close to her said she didn't get angry. She got quiet, and that quiet was so much worse. Shortly after that, the Queen sent Charles a personal note. Nobody knows exactly what it said. The full contents never came out. But here's what we do know. The envelope had one handwritten line on it. Just one. And that line carried enough weight to change everything, even though we don't know what it said. It was her final warning to her son about what was happening to the family's reputation, written by a woman who knew she didn't have much time left. But the Netflix special wasn't the only thing causing problems. During her time at the palace, staff members started noticing things being handled differently than usual. The normal protocols that everyone followed, they were getting sidestepped. People who'd worked there for decades found themselves shut out of situations they'd normally be part of.
25, 30 minutes. This was twice as long, so that's an improvement. If details of this meeting are leaked out,
it created this weird tension where nobody quite knew what was happening or why the usual procedures weren't being followed anymore. Then later, Meghan talked publicly about a personal loss she'd experienced, and when she did, she criticized the royal household for not supporting her emotionally during that time. But here's the thing. They never actually knew the full situation because the usual communication channels hadn't been used. Staff members who would normally be kept informed, they were left completely in the dark. One senior member reportedly described the whole situation as deeply destabilizing, which is probably the most diplomatic way possible to say they felt something wasn't adding up. The tension kept building, and then came something that people inside saw as the absolute final straw. She started trying to get Catherine, the Princess of Wales, on her streaming shows.
By direct order of His Majesty, King Charles III, effective immediately, the title Duchess of Sussex shall no longer...
Not once, but multiple times. These weren't casual, let's catch up invitations. These were formal requests for Catherine to appear on exclusive productions in the U.S., thinly disguised as reconciliation opportunities. Catherine said no. She declined through the proper people, staying professional and polite the whole time. But the requests kept coming, and the people watching this unfold, they saw it for exactly what it was. Someone trying to pull royal dignity into the streaming market. Trying to use family connections for content. One person close to the situation called it the ultimate slap in the face, an olive branch that was actually just another business opportunity wrapped in family drama. What made it worse was the timing. All of this was happening while the family was already fractured, already hurting. Catherine had stayed silent through everything.
Remember, there's only room for one sovereign at a time, not two. So you can't be the same as the sovereign.
All the accusations, all the media narratives, all the public back and forth. She'd taken the high road consistently, never responding, never defending herself publicly. And now she was being asked to show up on camera for these projects. The audacity of it was breathtaking. By this point, the cracks that had been private for so long were becoming impossible to hide. The family wasn't just distant, they were done. While all this family drama was unfolding, something else was happening in the background that nobody was really paying attention to at first. But when you look at the timeline, it's wild. In 2021, this document surfaced. Sussex Global Holdings. It was a business setup, a whole company built for media production, publishing, lifestyle branding, you name it. And it was registered just months after the Oprah interview, like weeks after Meghan's first children's book came out.
The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, is likewise excluded for the same grave breach.
The timing wasn't coincidental, it was strategic. Check this out. People started noticing a pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. She would talk publicly about struggles or challenges, and then boom, product launch. Interview about difficulties, book announcement, story about personal pain, podcast deal. It happened over and over again, like clockwork. March 2021, the Oprah interview airs, right? Where all the big bombshell claims come out. April 2021, barely a month later, her first book gets announced. July of that same year, she writes this really emotional essay about a personal loss. August 2021, Spotify podcast teaser drops. Then we get to December 2022, the Netflix documentary series, followed almost immediately in early 2023 by another Netflix project.
Money was slipping away, moving in directions no one authorized, and it was happening right.
And right on its heels, Harry's memoir launches. Each time there was a story, a revelation, or a public statement about how hard things had been, there was a commercial venture right behind it. And honestly, that former palace staff member nailed it when they said, they didn't just leave the institution, they torched the place and sold tickets to the blaze. What nobody expected was how aggressive the commercialization would become. This wasn't just doing a few interviews or writing a book. This was building an entire empire with the royal connection as its foundation. Each pitch, each partnership, each deal somehow circled back to the Sussex name or stories about life inside the palace. The brand wasn't just using royal connections. It was completely built on them. Meanwhile, Harry was becoming more and more isolated from his own family. People close to the situation confirmed that by late 2022,
is close to William, that a reconciliation is not on his agenda.
That's entirely up to them.
He'd basically stopped communicating with Charles and William altogether. Not reduced, communication. We're talking nearly zero contact. He wasn't showing up for family gatherings, wasn't responding to invitations, and when Catherine visited the U.S. in early 2023 for something completely separate, he reportedly refused to even meet with her privately. The people around Charles said he was making attempt after attempt to fix things, inviting his son to Windsor, sending personal notes through people he trusted, even reaching out directly to Meghan with offers to talk things through with a neutral third party. All of it either ignored completely or sent back through representatives and handlers. At one point, Charles reportedly told someone close to him that it felt like he was negotiating with agents instead of talking to family.
Buckingham Palace has just issued an official communique stating that King Charles has completed the legal procedures and...
That's how distant it had become. And you could see the toll it was taking. A memo that got leaked from July 2023 described the king as visibly upset after each new headline involving the Sussexes. This wasn't just professional frustration. This was personal anguish. William, who'd always been the diplomatic one, the peacemaker in a lot of situations, started referring to what was happening as a ghost war against the crown. Not a real battle you could see or defend against, but something constant and damaging happening in the background. By mid-2024, the situation had gone from bad to completely unsustainable. Each new project the Sussexes announced felt like another attack on the institution. Each interview was another wound. And the palace? They were just watching it happen, documenting it, building their case, but not yet ready to make their move. That was coming. They just needed the right moment.
Harry and Meghan Markle of their HRH titles. Riley Sullivan is a lifestyle reporter here at skynews.com.au, and he's always
October 2024. While everyone was focused on the public drama, something was happening behind the scenes that nobody knew about. A meeting took place at St. James's Palace, and it had a code name, Project Clarion. That alone should tell you how serious this was getting. These weren't casual conversations anymore. This was strategic planning at the highest level. The whole thing was put together quietly by Princess Anne. And listen, Anne doesn't mess around. She's always been the no-nonsense member of the family, the one who saw problems coming before anyone else did. While the king was still hoping things might turn around, Anne was already building the blueprint for what needed to happen. She'd recognized the damage years before it became obvious to everyone else, and now she was putting together the plan to fix it. Leading this meeting was Lady Margaret Combe, this incredibly sharp woman who knows royal history.
This royal chaos for the first time. You need a quick rundown on Meghan Markle. She's been the spark-igniting palace drama for years.
And how things work inside and out. She's the kind of person who's only loyal to one thing: precedent and protecting the institution. And what she told Charles was blunt, almost brutal. If the title remains active, it ceases to be tradition. It becomes a trademark. That is not royal continuity. It's commercial dilution. Think about that. She wasn't just saying Meghan was misusing the title. She was saying the title itself was being transformed into something completely different, something commercial, and that transformation was damaging the entire system. He heard that and it hit hard. But even then, Charles wasn't ready to pull the trigger. He wanted to monitor the situation, see if maybe things would calm down naturally. But then 3 things happened in 2025.
This wasn't just about a name. It was personal. Why did Princess Anne decide to do this? How did Meghan react?
That basically made the decision for him. First, in May 2025, she pitched a documentary series to international streaming platforms called Behind the Crown. And check this out, she was allegedly requesting that certain royal family members make cameo appearances, not suggesting, requesting, like she had the authority to pull them into her commercial projects. The palace never even consulted. They found out through back channels, and the whole thing just felt completely out of line. Then in June 2025, during some promotional interview in Los Angeles, someone asked Meghan about her children's royal titles. Her response: they'll decide for themselves whether royalty matters. On the surface, maybe that sounds reasonable. Let the kids choose their own path, right? But the way it came across to people at the palace was dismissive, like the whole institution was just optional, something you could take or leave based on convenience.
Why she doesn't keep the comment section open on her Instagram page on it.
But by design, I also recognize that a lot of...
The final straw came in August 2025. People at the British Embassy in Washington quietly flagged that Meghan's foundation was using a modified version of the royal seal. Not the exact one, but close enough that it was causing confusion and creating problems with official relationships. This wasn't just about brand usage anymore. This was affecting actual international connections. After all 3 of those incidents, Charles called a meeting at Birk Hall, his private estate in Scotland. This wasn't a big formal gathering. It was intimate, serious, and focused. Princess Anne was there. So was the Lord Chamberlain. Prince William showed up. Catherine came too. They spent 3 hours going through everything, weighing options, talking through consequences. By the end of it, he'd made up his mind. People who were there said Charles leaned back in his chair, looked exhausted, and said something that summed it all up.
Embrace change could reflect modern Britain. That dream lasted approximately 18 months.
Then let it be done. For the crown, for clarity, for my grandchildren. Not angry, not vengeful, just resolved. He'd tried everything else. Nothing worked. And now he had to think about what this institution would look like for George, Charlotte, and Louis. What kind of precedent was being set for them? What would the monarchy even mean if titles could be used however someone wanted? That meeting at Burke Hall, that's when the decision became real. Everything that followed was just execution. What happened after that meeting wasn't just about stripping away a title. The palace saw this as an opportunity to actually change how things worked moving forward. They didn't just want to fix the Meghan situation. They wanted to make sure nothing like this could happen again. And that's exactly what they did. They created something called the Windsor Integrity Office.
Together, ending months of hesitation and issuing a decision few thought they'd dare make. Meghan's title
Sounds formal, but basically it's a watchdog that keeps tabs on how royal titles get used, especially on digital platforms and in international deals. From now on, if you're part of the royal family and you want to do any kind of third-party commercial deal, it has to get checked out first. You've got to share your branding partnerships, any foundation money over £1 million, and how you're using royal history or images in public. It's not about controlling people. It's about protecting what the title actually means. Some people called it overreach, said it was like Big Brother watching everything. But others saw it differently. This wasn't about being paranoid. This was about updating the monarchy for a world where one Instagram post can reach more people than 1,000 public appearances, where a streaming deal can define your public image more than years of charity work.
Calculation. Harry, Charles says, voice low and steady, like he's rehearsed this. Huh.
The rules needed to catch up with reality. And here's where it gets interesting. Catherine had her fingerprints all over how this whole thing got communicated. She wasn't signing anything or making public statements, but behind the scenes, she was the one pushing for specific language, specific tone. People who worked on the announcement said she kept emphasizing the same thing over and over. No anger, no revenge, just measured resolve. She wanted everything to feel dignified, not like some petty attack. The final statement that went out showed exactly that. It was firm, clear, direct, but there wasn't a hint of personal anger in it. It basically said the Duchess of Sussex title couldn't be associated with work that didn't reflect the crown's mission and values anymore. Surgical precision. That was all Catherine's influence, making sure this
came from Meghan Markle. And
whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump, the fact is,
didn't turn into a mudslinging match. But the palace wasn't just creating new rules. They were also thinking about the practical side of things. With Harry and Meghan out of the picture for royal duties, there was a gap. Events that needed covering, patronages that needed attention, public engagements that still had to happen. And that's where Lady Louise Windsor comes in. Louise had been pretty quiet up until this point, living a relatively normal life compared to other royals. But in late November 2025, people started noticing her showing up at events with Princess Anne, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, a couple of other places. They called it a learning visit at the time, just her getting some experience. But insiders now say that wasn't the full story. She was being prepared to take on actual royal duties, filling part of the void left by the Sussexes.
The Duchess of Sussex, a place she is unlikely to visit, as by all accounts she has refused to set foot in the UK ever again. Not even sure.
There's even talk about giving her a new title, possibly Duchess of Edinburgh, sometime in early 2026. It would be this symbolic gesture, showing that the family's moving forward, bringing in people who want to serve rather than people who want to monetize. And Louise, she's apparently all in. No drama, no demands, just quiet dedication to the work. One person close to the planning put it perfectly. Where Meghan turned away from tradition to build her stage, Louise is stepping into it. Not for herself, but for the country. That contrast couldn't be clearer. Two completely different approaches to what it means to be royal. The whole restructuring wasn't just reactive. It was strategic.
Most years, the annual audit is straightforward and unremarkable. But in early December 2025, something strange.
Princess Anne had been working on this framework for months, maybe even longer. She saw what was coming and prepared for it. While everyone else was watching the drama unfold, Anne was building the systems that would outlast it. And now those systems are in place, protecting the institution not just from the current situation, but from whatever comes next. This wasn't about punishment, it was about evolution. December 1st, 2025. The morning everything became real. While most people were just waking up, something historic was happening at the College of Arms in London. A folder showed up, velvet-bound, sealed with crimson wax and the crown's insignia. Inside was a 5-page declaration, and what it said was about to change everything. The whole thing was presented behind closed doors. No cameras, no media, no crowd watching.
Royal watchers were in a frenzy. The titles Duke and Duchess of Sussex were gone, erased, replaced with 2 names.
Just a small group of people who needed to be there to make it real. 4 people total. That's it. They gathered in the Royal Archives room at Windsor Castle, and what happened next was almost ceremonial in how quiet and deliberate it was. They took the Sussex Duchess registry card, the official record that Meghan held that title, and placed it into what they call the Legacy Vault. This vault is serious business. The last time anything went in there was 1936, when King Edward VIII abdicated. Almost 90 years, and now her name was going in next to his. What that meant wasn't lost on anyone in that room. At 3:15 that afternoon, the palace's communications team released a statement. And this one came directly from King Charles himself. You could tell he'd written most of it personally. The language, the tone, all of it felt deeply intentional. He talked about the duty of preserving the crown's integrity.
That's what you need to do. Meghan, I'm telling you, this woman needs to be put in her place. And the fact that you now have this whole...
Not as decoration, but as responsibility. He acknowledged contributions made in the past, recognized how complicated everything had been. But then he got to the heart of it. Titles are not shields for contradiction. They are vows, symbolic, yes, but sacred. When vows are broken, the symbols must be set down. People close to him said he wrote that core message the night before, sitting alone in his study at Highgrove, writing it out by hand. His team wanted softer language, something less direct. He refused. This was his message, and he wasn't going to water it down. But while all this was being announced publicly, something else was happening privately. That same morning, a courier delivered a personal letter from Charles to Harry in Montecito. Nobody knows everything it said. It's never been released.
Every weekday with no advertising whatsoever. You can also message me direct on there. That's www.
But one line apparently leaked out through someone who saw it. I did not revoke your marriage. I revoked a mirror that no longer reflected the crown. Think about that line. The king wasn't attacking Harry's relationship with Meghan. He was saying the title, the public representation of that relationship within the monarchy, had stopped reflecting what it was supposed to represent. It's such a careful distinction, and it shows how much thought went into this whole thing. Harry's response? Complete silence. Nothing Not a phone call, not a message back, nothing at all. But Meghan's team, they were on it immediately. They reached out to the palace about damage control, about what this meant for ventures that had used the Duchess title, about how to handle the reputational impact. The contrast between Harry's silence and her immediate response through her team said everything about where their priorities were. By evening, her people put out a brief statement from Montecito.
Their titles are secure, that nothing will happen, that they are just able to go on doing what they're doing with.
Very polished, very strategic. It said she remained committed to advocating for global equity, compassion, and family values, and called the palace's action a regrettable distraction from the real work. The whole thing was designed to sound noble and above it all, but it didn't address the actual issue. It was deflection, pure and simple. Meanwhile, reactions were pouring in from everywhere. UK polls taken the next day showed 64% of people supported the decision. Support was even higher among older generations who remembered what the monarchy used to represent, but it was split pretty evenly in the US, where a lot of people saw this as the palace being cruel or outdated. And through all of this, the palace stayed completely unmoved. No follow-up statements, no clarifications, no defending the decision. They'd said what needed to be said, done what needed to be done, and that was it.
Or accounts, suspicious payments, systematic monetization of royal access. The conclusion was clear.
The door had closed, and they weren't opening it back up for debate. So there you have it, December 1st, 2025. The day the monarchy said enough is enough. When people in the UK woke up the next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Social media went absolutely crazy. Hashtags were trending across the planet. Some people were shocked, some weren't surprised at all, and everyone had an opinion. The numbers tell their own story, though. Polls taken right after showed 64% of people in the UK backed what the king did. That's not just a slim majority. That's a pretty clear signal that most people felt this was necessary. When you break it down by age, the support was even stronger among older folks who grew up with a different understanding of what the royal family represented. They saw it as long overdue, a correction that should have happened way earlier.
And apparently at the top of his list is to say, "Peace out, Meghan, you're done." And he plans to formally strip Meghan Markle of her royal.
But the reaction wasn't the same everywhere. In the US, opinions were split pretty much down the middle. Half the people thought the palace was being harsh and outdated, stuck in old traditions that don't matter anymore. The other half saw it as the royals finally standing up for themselves after years of being used for brand building and profit. Two completely different perspectives on the exact same event. Here's the thing, though, removing a title from one person wasn't the whole point. It was way bigger than that. For the first time in over 100 years, the House of Windsor made something crystal clear. Just because you marry into the family doesn't mean you get to keep the benefits forever. The deal has terms. You represent the crown with dignity and respect, or you don't get to represent it at all. Simple as that. That's a massive shift in how things work. For generations, once you were in, you were in.
And without fanfare, without press releases, without the thunder of official announcements echoing through Buckingham Palace Hall.
Your title was yours, your position was secure, and the family would protect you no matter what. But Charles changed that calculation. He drew a line and said, "This far, no further." And he did it knowing full well it would cost him his relationship with his son. That's not a decision anyone makes lightly. The night everything became public, he went back to his study. People around him said he looked exhausted, but also relieved, like someone who'd been carrying an impossible weight and finally got to put it down. Someone asked him what came next, what the plan was moving forward. His response: "Take back what's ours and let everything else sort itself out." That line sums up the entire approach. He wasn't trying to punish anyone. He wasn't trying to win a public relations battle or make anyone look bad. He was simply reclaiming control over what the monarchy means, what its titles represent.
Have rogue royals. Now, particularly it's Harry and Meghan because they're the most sort of egregious actors constantly.
And who gets to carry them? Everything else, the media reactions, the public debates, the family dynamics, all of that would have to work itself out on its own. And honestly, the door didn't just close, it locked. There's no going back from any of it. The standard is set. Future royals now know that titles aren't automatic, aren't guaranteed, and definitely aren't tools for building personal brands. They're responsibilities that come with expectations, and if you can't meet those expectations, they'll be taken away. Looking back at everything that led up to December 1st, 18 months of documentation, the failed reconciliation attempts, the commercial empire building, the secret meetings, the new systems put in place, it all makes sense now. Nothing about it was rash or done in anger.
Monarchy's most decisive break yet from the crown itself. The shocking discovery that rocked the throne. In a world...
Every piece was carefully calculated by a king who understood that protecting the crown meant making the hardest choice of his life. Charles chose the monarchy over his son. He chose tradition over tolerance. He chose the future over the present comfort of keeping the peace. And whether you think that was right or wrong, you can't deny it took courage. The royal family entered a new era on December 1st, 2025. Not because it gained something, but because it finally let something go. If this whole story left you thinking about what the monarchy even means in 2025, you're not alone. Drop a comment and let me know. Did Charles make the right call or did he go too far? Hit that like button if you made it this far. And subscribe because the royal drama, it's definitely not over. I'll catch you in the next one.